Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here, and it was really interesting to listen to previous speaker as well. So my compliments also to her for choosing this topic. It seems that maybe I am the lucky one because I served also in the government where we had more or less half women and half male colleagues, and at that time also the president of Estonia was a female. So we had prime minister, president, prime minister, foreign minister. We all were women, and it was really a great time for my country. But otherwise, I very much agree that here and there we really need to fight for this equal rights for men and women in society. But now I jump into my topic. So we have a decline of democracy for more than a decade. This statement is based on statistics. And I will not elaborate it for long, but this is really unfortunate trend, and the same is valid also for different freedoms. For example, the index of internet freedom has declined also for 11 years. I was in, more or less a year ago, I was in Ukraine. I went to Ukraine on the 23rd of February, just on the eve when the full-fledged war started in Ukraine. And it was for me the first time to escape the country where a military attack occurred. But I was the lucky one. I was among thousands of people who fled the country. But why I was the lucky one? Because I returned to my home. It was about 12 hours drive from Kiev towards the border of Poland. But the whole road was full of people who left their country, and very many of them have not had chance to return their country. They have not had chance to see their relatives as the war occurred in Ukraine. So, and of course, we all had some hints about this this war and hints that this war may start in the recent future because we saw this Russia's army gathering next to the borders of Ukraine. But in spite of that, we three Baltic foreign ministers, we decided to go to Ukraine to show our support to democracy and sovereignty of this country and of these people. And of course, on the eve of 24th of February, you could really see that the city of Kiev was really functioning normally. People were happy, they were in the restaurants, and the day after, everything changed. I've been back in Ukraine 4 times since that. Last time I was there in December because my current job is also related to development cooperation programs. But I'm not going to elaborate on this longer, but I just have seen with my own eyes how this country has changed. And this is also the reason why I chose this topic, because I've seen that how much those people want to have this change. They would like to have democratic governance. They were fighting for this democratic governance already in 2004, in 2015, and now again in 2022. It is, of course, a big problem for Europe. It is a big problem for the international law and international security. The illegal annexation of Crimea was the first step, of course, which show that Russia is not following the international law. Unfortunately, it had happened also before that Russia intervened into the sovereignty and democracy of sovereign neighboring countries. It happened in 2008 in Georgia. It happened also already in 90s when we speak about the situation in Moldova. But the international community didn't act properly. Those countries were more or less left alone with the aggressor. And the people who wanted to have democracy in those countries, they were not able to have it. Why I'm saying that? Because I would say that in 1991, or we can say it also after the collapse of Berlin Wall in 1989, countries like mine, Estonia, or country like Moldova or Ukraine, or Latvia, Lithuania, we were more or less in the same situation. We got free from the Soviet occupation or Soviet Union, and we could start to build our own countries. Some of us have managed to join the European Union and NATO by today, but some of us are struggling for the sovereignty, for the territorial integrity, for the democratic governance in their countries. And I think that this is because one of the countries is thinking that this country is above the international law, and this is not right. I believe that all the countries around the globe should really have strong stance against aggressor countries in the international community. And what does it mean? It means a lot of things. I think that it's really important to really react when you see the first signs of aggressive behavior of authoritarian countries, especially now when we speak about the Olympic Games in Paris next year. I believe that countries who attack their neighbors should not participate or should not allow to be participating in Olympic Games. Also, there should be other measures to isolate aggressors in the international community so that they would start to behave. Another thing, of course, what we see at the moment in Ukraine is unfortunately very sad. About 8 million people have fled the country, and about 8 million people are internal IDPs. Cities are so damaged that it's not possible to live there. It means that someone has to rebuild this country. It's a big country. It's a country of 44 million people. Every day, people get killed on the war in the eastern border of Ukraine. But at the same time, we see also UAVs, unmanned aviation vehicles, drones, which fly towards Ukrainian cities and kill civilians or destroy civilian infrastructure. And it's so sad to say, but the international community is kind of helpless. We are not able to help Ukraine or people of Ukraine, though they are fighting for the freedom of their country, but also for the democratic values. In 90s, we saw that when Iraq attacked Kuwait, later the United Nations, under the United Nations, also a commission was created where all those who had suffered from these attacks of Iraq, they could apply for financial assistance so that they could rebuild their homes, cities, and infrastructure in Kuwait. So unfortunately, this measure also was not good enough to make Iraq a democratic country or to make these kind of changes, but at least it helped to cover the costs of rebuilding Kuwait and maybe a little bit suffering of people. Because of course, with any money you cannot take away this emotional pain what we see in Ukraine at the moment, or in any other country where we have seen wars or aggressive attacks of other countries. Of course, I speak here a lot about Europe because this is very immediate for us here at the moment, but as Estonia was the elected member of the United Nations in 2020 and 2021, and 1 year during this period of time I was also a foreign minister, then we of course were involved with so many other crises around the globe, and some of them are really very similar to the crisis that we see at the moment in Ukraine. The main point here is really that the country who is aggressor should really help to cover the cost. And the sooner this pressure is put to the aggressor country, the sooner it is possible to expect that this bombing and damaging of properties, cities, hospitals, and schools of other countries might end. Another issue which I wanted to touch briefly is media freedom and fundamental freedoms, because like our previous speaker said, that women's rights is one of the main pillars of democracy. I would say I very much agree, but I would say that another pillar of this is definitely media freedom. And the most common instruments of an authoritarian regime are usually war and repressions. And we have clear evidence for that also from Russia. And not only from Russia internally, but also when we speak about Russia's aggression in Ukraine. We all, as this war is really like unfolding in front of our eyes, we have seen bombed cities, we have seen victims of war crimes, either they have been raped or tortured. We all have seen all these images from media. During the first 2 months, more than 10 journalists got killed in Ukraine, covering these horrific war crimes. And it also shows how important this job is, what the journalists do, and they also help to record the war crimes, which all these recorders can be used later in the court. But this is not the only problem. I mean, this is of course a problem that people get killed in this dangerous job. But another problem takes place in Russia, where journalists who have really had this courage to report properly what's going on in Ukraine, they have been imprisoned. Just the day before yesterday, I read from the news that Maria Pomarenko got 6 years sentenced for reporting the bombing of Mariupol theater, which was one of the bomb shelters used by civilians in Mariupol city. And she wrote about it in Telegram and got punished with 6 years in prison for that. The same happened recently with another journalist in Russia, a journalist and a human rights activist, Kara-Murza. But this kind of signs of aggression, this kind of signs of authoritarian regimes, of course, we saw already earlier in Russia. For example, Anna Politovskaya was one of the Russian journalists who was killed about 17 years ago because she reported the war in Chechnya. At that time, she worked for the Novaya Gazeta, which was one of the newspapers which was closed down in April last year, also because they tried to report more honestly what's going on in Ukraine. So I think that we have really seen how Russia used propaganda and disinformation before the war already, and they continue to do the same while war is ongoing. And it is really one of the signs that there is really no democracy in Russia. At the same time, they do the same in occupied areas of Ukraine. They suppress people in occupied areas, either it's in parts of Donetsk or Luhansk Oblast or annexed Crimea. And they turn those areas of temporary occupied areas of Ukraine towards also authoritarian regimes. And this is really a big danger for democratic court, for democratic countries and for democracy. And I truly hope that all these war crimes in some point are taken to the international court, and the recordings of journalists and other investigators are useful for this decision making later. Why do I say that democracy is stronger than tanks? Because it is really difficult to say it, because we see so many people who are striving towards democratic governance. They fight for the freedom of their country. They got killed by the tanks, and at the same time, Western countries just recently made this decision that we should provide more equipment and weapons to Ukraine, including tanks, so that they could fight for the freedom. I remember that back in the spring of the last year, it was huge discussion among allies and partners here in Europe whether countries should provide lethal weapons for Ukraine. And general understanding was that no, we should not. But it turned out that it's if you are weak against aggressor, you cannot beat it back. And this is really very unfortunate that here we are in the 21st century, and we really need to use heavy military equipment to protect our democratic world order. So I see that my time is getting to an end. I would like to say something more positive to the end about Ukraine. I think that really, as those people there fight for their own country's freedom, for the freedom of Europe, and for democratic values, they have chosen the path towards the European Union. And I'm really glad that the European Union has really showed strong support towards support towards their candidacy status, and has a lot of programs to help to reform this country so that in some point the country is ready to join the EU as well. I think that this kind of enlargement of the zone of your democratic countries is really beneficial for Europe. And the less authoritarian regimes we have in Europe, the more secure everyone could could feel themselves here. But as it is a forum here, I would like to really finish my short intervention with a few questions so that everyone could elaborate on them later. I think that these questions are really relevant to everyone in the international community. And the first one is, why did we let Russia to intervene into sovereignty of its neighbors for so long? Did we support the dual-track approach in relations with Russia for too long? Could this war have been prevented? How many similar situations we have around the globe? How to restore trust towards international law and trust towards democratic processes. And as a representative of a small country, country of 1.3 million people, we always have really trusted the international law, though we suffered also, of course, after the Second World War. And but our first president of after the independence of Estonia in 1991, President Meri, he said that international law is a nuclear weapon of small states. But today I have to admit that we are losing trust towards international law. So I truly hope that together with other countries around the globe, especially small and medium-sized countries, we can restore it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very thought-provoking speech. We're running behind schedule, but I do want to allow for maybe one or two very brief questions, brief responses, and then of course we have the evening. We can continue more informally. But would someone like to pose a brief question or make a brief comment in the forum here? Thank
you very much for a very interesting speech. You said Russia should cover the cost, but at the end you said you're losing your faith in international law. So how is Russia going to be made to pay the cost?
Many countries around the globe have frozen Russia's assets. So there is something with which it would be possible to pressure Russia to cover the costs of damages in Ukraine. But I referred also towards the possible commission under the United Nations, which would, of course, be much more related to the international law and maybe would also help to restore the trust towards the international law.
One more quick question.
My comment and question is also related to international law. I come from the Philippines. We are also considered as a small state in our region. And also we are part of a regional organization, the ASEAN. We have a very big problem in terms of territorial disputes with China, especially. And as a Filipino who raised the issue with UNCLOS, and I think what I would comment is I hope Estonia does not lose the trust in international law, because international law has saved us a little bit of leverage when it comes to our dealings with China. And I know that the situation now is very sad and unfortunate, but at the same time, trust in international law is really important. I worked for the German embassy for 6 years, and international law is also one of the things that we have promoted in the Philippines. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Would you like to respond, or?
I very much agree, very much agree. I truly hope that we can trust international law also in the future, and we can solve this current situation so that international law can be trusted in the future.
Well, great. Well, then please join me in expressing our sincere gratitude. Excellent speech.